maybe to get started,
Yeah.
right? I don't know. I suggest that we talk about the hot box situation.
Sure.
Because
Yeah,
that's sort of the
yeah. I would like to talk about that, and then
the
I'd like to talk
bring point
about how I
about it.
actually met you and the reason that I thought we could have a good, interesting conversation. So I'll do both those things. I'm not a performer, but I decided that I needed to be a masculine kind of focus, and so I put myself in it. And the way that I sort of created the conditions for the performance where I drank alcohol to excess, and then I exercised intensely, and then the performance was mostly just a meditation on my face and the kind of presence that I could hopefully bring to the image inside the conditions that I had created. And it's all about, for me, this idea of immersion into a certain kind of environment, a certain kind of circumstance, and the way in which that kind of situation can hopefully alter our shared experience of time inside the conditions that I had created. And it's all about, for me, this idea of immersion into a certain kind of environment, a certain kind of circumstance, and the way in which that kind of situation can hopefully alter our shared experience of time. And the reason that I wanted to talk to Pau today about this was I met him just a few months ago. He contributed to a performance at my venue by an artist named Aki Sasamoto, and he made this quite beautiful prologue to her performance that involved basically pendulums.
time. Yes.
And just sort of the releasing of a certain kind of image that would play out. And it had I don't know, my experience of time in watching those things was really kind of profound, and so I thought that it would be interesting.
The simple thing is just hanging a bottle of ink or paint, and you just release it in a circular fashion and let it go, releasing the paint on some surface. And so the experience for me is a collective experiential performance piece in which people stand around it. And what happens in class is what has happened, right? That slow movement talks about time in the sense that it's our experience in life, which is totally repetitive, every day, and then after a while you say, wow, it's so different from where I started, you know? So it has this sort of uniformity or similarity from the day before, but then after a while you say, 20 years, you know? And so the experience of the pendulum situation, it really relates to that. So when it's about to, it's circling the center and brings everybody together too, you know? Everybody's just sort of falling. But that stretches time, annihilates time, or shows the stillness of time.
Yeah.
And that is where I said, gee, so Brian's taking these issues is from a completely different perspective, but it's sort of course, talking about time and related to time.
And it goes into this whole idea that I think that the audiences for my work, it's much harder for them because they're not I feel like people are people coming into like a shared performance, you know, this expectation that we all have of what our shared experience of time will be. I think is different from what I propose for them when they come sometimes, and so it can be very difficult for some people in the audiences of my work to go with the notion that I'm proposing, which is in some ways I'm not going to give you anything. Here's this image. I'm just going to look at this image for a while, and I'm giving you all this space, and will you fill this space?
Because the metaphor is this losing track of, right? The metaphor we often use about it is so spatial, linear, you know, so you lose track, but the track is there and then you hop into the track or something like that. But in your piece is not so much about losing track, right? It's more about sliding in all directions in time in a way. It's like being horizontal to it. Or
people often say, that held my attention, or you lost me there, then you got me back here. And I'm sort of resistant even to this notion that the performance is obliged in some way to grab or hold or keep the attention of the person that's watching it. I'm more interested in just having the thing be what it is. And the person that's watching it, hopefully, I'm asking the person who's watching it to give a specific amount of time up to it, but I'm then asking them to do what they, in a way, to do whatever they want with that time, which is what I think separates it from something that, if this were situated in a gallery or in a museum or something, it'd be very different, because then the person watching it would have complete control over how much time they gave to it, and that, I think, that creates a really sort of false result.
There is, in some mathematical systems too, right? There's there's time, that it's sort of our more common notion of timeness, which is this linear thing, right? It's quantitative, it's 5, 6, 7, 8. But there's also, in some instances, you can put to it, you can certainly treat it as what's called in mathematics complex time. Not complex in the sense of complicated, but complex in the sense of two-dimensional numbers, so to speak. And time can be, in some instances, be treated that way. And in that sense, it really, if we use that metaphors, it has to do with, perhaps, is what you are after in this hot boxing, which is suddenly you reach a state in which instead of flowing this way, you head off into the other dimension of time, you know? And so space no longer happens contiguously this way too. And that, so when you were telling me about this computer clock time in a way, I thought, wow, so,
Because there's this notion that I think that people have in performance, especially like in performance that involves, for example, improvisation, or for example, like jazz music, where in a way the communication that happens is all about maintaining this notion of time. Where it's like we're together, we're staying together as this thing unfolds, and we're having a conversation. And I was interested in sort of creating it and then letting it go, and then seeing if it's possible for our experience of that to actually change, even though mechanically it really doesn't change. Like you do doing it night to night, it's essentially unchanging. It does like have this sort of small variableness when the clocks fall out of sync, but basically it's always the same. But I think if you were to talk to different people who've watched it on different days, their notion of how much time passed in different places is very, very different, and that's interesting to me. And it's something that I want to do much more if I can,
And you also talk, in your work also, I'm interested in the, of course, it's what we have said, right? The non-narrative aspect of it, right?
In terms of what narrative means, I'm always quite fascinated by this idea of image as representation of another thing, and really wishing for myself and for other people to be able to look at an image for what it actually is, not for what associations it creates in our heads, if that makes any sense.
Sure.
So there's this idea, in a film with montage, if you see an image of a woman and she looks down to the left, and then you see another image of a dog, automatically you have this sort of constructed narrative of a woman and a dog, and you wonder if the woman is sad, and if the dog is hungry, or whatever. There's these things that happen, but I'm interested also just in the notion that all the image is a series of pixels, or in a different sense, it's just light and contrast, and it's just a thing. And what would it be like just to see the thing, as opposed to the thing and then what we draw from it? Like if it's like maybe we're just removing the intellect from it altogether. That's something that I'm quite interested in trying to do in that way, and never succeed in doing. But that is
the possibility
so
that you talk about,
right? And it's so tied to my experience of time in that way. Like it's like, oh, why can't the image? Why can't it be it goes back to the idea of a portrait. Why can't there be an hour-long film, but it's just one frame? Like this thing that this notion that we have to still lay things out on a timeline. I think I dislike the timeline, but can't get away from the timeline. And so I'm trying to like have a timeline that can fold in on itself and somehow like erase it. It's like I kind of want to make a performance black hole that like sucks itself in. And come like
you're looking for the impossibility of of the center of it, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I'm trying to do.